The fluorescent lights hummed above Eleanor Whitmore's bed, a thin, relentless sound that made the room feel colder than it was. The air carried the sharp bite of disinfectant and something sweeter beneath it, flowers left too long in water. A heart monitor kept time beside her, steady and indifferent, as if pain could be measured and filed away. Eleanor lay almost motionless under a hospital blanket that felt heavier than fabric. Every breath dragged across her ribs like sandpaper. When she tried to swallow, her throat burned. 3 days in this bed had taught her the ceiling better than her own reflection. The white tiles, the hairline cracks, the faint stain near the corner where the light never quite reached. She had counted them the way people counted prayers. She had been waiting for Grant. Not for a grand gesture, not for a speech, just for his hand, warm around her fingers, just for the quiet certainty of someone staying. She had pictured the door opening and his voice, softer than it had been lately, telling her she would be okay. She had pictured him sitting close, the scent of his cologne mixing with the hospital air, grounding her back in a life that still made sense. Instead, the door opened with a clean click, and Grant Whitmore walked in like he was on schedule. His suit was perfectly pressed, a dark charcoal that belonged in a boardroom, not a medical ward. His tie was straight. His shoes looked polished enough to reflect the harsh overhead light. He did not pause at the threshold to take in the wires, the bruising, the way Eleanor's chest rose and fell like it cost her something each time. His eyes went to the bed and then past it, as if he were assessing a layout. He carried a manila envelope. The sound it made when he set it down was small, the dry slap of paper against blanket. But in the sterile quiet, it landed like a verdict. Eleanor stared at it, confused at first. Her mind moved slower than usual, the lingering fog of medication still clinging to the edges of her thoughts. She tried to lift her head, and pain flared hot along her side, stealing the air from her lungs. A thin gasp escaped her before she could stop it. Grant did not reach for her. He did not ask if she needed help. He did not touch the bed rail. "Sign while you are still in good spirits from the medication," he said. His voice was calm, the same tone he used when presenting quarterly numbers, when closing deals over dinner, when telling someone no without sounding like the villain. He said it like he was doing her a favor. Eleanor's eyes dropped to the envelope again. The corner of the paper beneath it showed typed lines, dense and official. She could make out a few words even from here, black ink on white that refused to blur into something harmless. Dissolution. Assets. Irreconcilable. Her mouth went dry. She tried to speak, but the first sound that came out was too small, a rough scrape of breath. "Grant," she managed. He glanced down at her the way someone glanced at a delayed flight update. Then, before she could form the next word, his wrist turned and his watch caught the light. He checked the time. Not once, twice. The second glance was quicker, sharper, as if the first had been wasted. Eleanor felt something in her chest tighten that had nothing to do with broken ribs. She tried to push herself up, instinctively, the way she would have in their kitchen when he said something that stung. Pain detonated through her torso, bright and immediate. Her vision whitened around the edges. She fell back against the pillows, shaking, the sheet crumpling under her fingers. Grant's expression did not change. "I've been thinking," he said, and his eyes stayed cool. "This is the right time for both of us to move forward separately." The heart monitor ticked on, steady, as if it approved. Eleanor stared at him, at the flawless knot of his tie, at the clean line of his jaw, at the absence of anything human in the way he stood there. She had loved this man for 12 years. She had learned the rhythm of his moods, the meaning of his silences, the way he laughed when he wanted someone to like him. She had defended him to friends, to family, to herself, again and again. She had built her life around the idea that when the world cracked open, he would be the one thing that held. Now he was handing her paperwork like he was closing out an account. A faint, disbelieving sound came out of Eleanor's throat. It might have been a laugh if it did not hurt so much. The movement pulled at her chest, and she winced, teeth clenched, eyes burning. "You're joking," she whispered. Grant's gaze stayed flat. "My lawyer flagged the relevant sections," he said. "There's a signature tab. You'll see it." He said lawyer the way he said accountant or auditor, like everything important in life came with a professional stamp. He shifted his weight. smooth and controlled, and the leather of his shoes made a soft squeak against the floor. Eleanor's eyes flicked to the manila envelope again. For a second, she thought of their wedding day, the warmth of his palm, the way his hands had shaken when he lifted the ring. She thought of the vow he spoke, clear and steady, promising to stay through sickness and health. She thought of that word now, sickness, and how cheaply it could be rewritten. Grant reached for the bed rail, not to steady her, but to slide the envelope closer within her reach. The paper rasped over the blanket, a sound too mundane for what it meant. "I'll give you time," he said, "but I need this signed by Friday." Friday. A deadline. A due date. A closing window. Eleanor stared up at him, and the room seemed to narrow until there was only his face and the hum of fluorescent lights. She tried to speak again, but her tongue felt thick, her thoughts moving through syrup. Grant straightened his jacket with a quick tug, smoothing invisible lint like he was preparing for the next meeting. "I'll be in touch," he said. Then he turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind him, clean and final. The sound echoed in the sterile room like a gunshot. Eleanor lay there, staring at the envelope on her blanket. The heart monitor continued its steady rhythm. The flowers on the side table sagged in their vase, petals curling inward, water gone slightly cloudy. The air smelled faintly of wilt and antiseptic. Her phone sat on the bedside table within reach, dark screen reflecting the harsh ceiling light. A moment passed, then another. The phone vibrated. Once, twice. The sound was small, a buzzing insect against plastic, but it cut through the room like a blade. Eleanor turned her head slowly, the movement sending a shallow flare of pain up her neck. Unknown number, the same one that had called before. Again and again, over the last few days. She had ignored it every time, too exhausted to deal with anything that was not survival. The phone vibrated again, more insistent. Eleanor stared at the screen, her pulse lifting, the monitor answering with faster beeps. Her hand inched toward the phone, trembling, fingers weak against the weight of decision. She did not know who was calling. She only knew Grant Pavor's papers on her blanket like trash. And someone out there kept trying to reach her anyway. Eleanor's fingertips hovered over the screen. The phone vibrated again, then went quiet, leaving only the faster beeping of the monitor and the thin hum of the lights. A voicemail notification appeared. She tapped it with a thumb that felt clumsy, as if her hand belonged to someone else. The speaker crackled. "Eleanor, this is urgent. I know what your husband is planning. I know because I am the one who—" The message cut off mid-syllable, replaced by a soft digital click. No name. No number she recognized. Just that unfinished sentence hanging in the air like a rope. Her pulse spiked. The monitor answered with a sharper tempo. She could hear it in her ears, too, a rushing that turned the room slightly unreal. She stared at the screen, reading the transcription as if the missing words might appear if she looked hard enough. A nurse appeared in the doorway, drawn by the change in rhythm. Her shoes made a quiet squeak on the polished floor. "Mrs. Whitmore," the nurse said, voice practiced and gentle. "Your readings jumped. Are you in pain?" Eleanor's mouth opened. For a moment, she wanted to tell the truth, to say the wrongness was so big it had its own gravity. But the nurse's eyes were already scanning the equipment, already reaching for the clip on Eleanor's finger. "I'm fine," Eleanor said, the lie coming automatically. "Just startled." The nurse adjusted the line, checked the drip, smoothed the blanket with hands that moved quickly and efficiently. The antiseptic smell grew stronger as she leaned in. "Your husband was here earlier," the nurse said, not looking up. "He didn't stay long." Eleanor's gaze slid toward the manila envelope, still sitting where it had been left. Paper on fabric, a quiet threat. "Is he coming back?" the nurse asked. Eleanor swallowed. The motion hurt. "No," she said quietly. "I don't think he is." The nurse's expression flickered with something sympathetic, then returned to neutral. She made one last adjustment, listened to the steady return of the monitor's rhythm, and stepped back. "Try to rest," she said. "Call if you need anything." The door eased shut behind her, and the room returned to its private quiet. Eleanor stared at the voicemail again. The cut-off sentence kept replaying in her head, each time ending like a door slammed in her face. She turned the phone over, then back again, as if the number might reveal itself. Unknown. Still unknown. Her fingers slid under the edge of the manila envelope. The paper was dry and stiff. She pulled the stack out slowly, the movement tugging at muscles that complained in dull, angry waves. Pages rustled. The sound was too ordinary for what she was holding. She saw the bold lines first. Petition for dissolution. Division of assets. Terms that looked clean and legal, like they had never been spoken in a room where someone was bleeding into their own body. A neon sticky tab marked a section. An arrow in neat handwriting pointed to a blank line. Sign here. Grant's handwriting. It was so familiar it made her stomach turn. She tried to read the next paragraph, but the words slid around. Not because she couldn't understand them, but because they refused to become real. Her eyes drifted to another line, then another. Friday. 3 days. Her throat tightened. She pressed her palm to her sternum, feeling the shallow rise and fall of her breathing. The blanket brushed her skin with every inhale, a constant reminder that she couldn't even shift positions without paying for it. Her phone buzzed again, startling her so hard she flinched. The screen lit the side of her face in pale blue. Unknown number. It rang 3 times. 4. Eleanor watched the call pulse on the screen. She imagined answering and hearing a stranger. A scam, a journalist, a lawyer, someone worse. She didn't answer. The ring stopped. A new voicemail icon appeared. She stared at it, then set the phone down as if it might bite her. The room felt suddenly too small. The beeping, the buzzing, the rustle of papers, all of it pressing in. The medication tugged at the edges of her consciousness. The morphine drip clicked, releasing a quiet promise of numbness. Eleanor fought it for a moment, trying to hold on to clarity, trying to keep her thoughts in line. But her body was tired. Her mind was tired. Shock weighed more than pain. Her eyelids grew heavy. The fluorescent lights blurred into a white haze. The ceiling tiles softened, edges melting. The last clear thing she saw before sleep took her was Grant's handwriting on that sticky note. Sign here. Then darkness, thick and dragging, pulled her under. Morning light made her eyes sting when she woke. Someone had opened the blinds, and the sun poured in without apology, bright and cheerful, as if nothing had happened. The air smelled faintly of coffee from somewhere down the hall, and the disinfectant was sharper now, newly wiped surfaces catching the light. Eleanor felt more awake today. The fog had thinned. Her thoughts moved faster, and with them came the full weight of everything. Her phone sat on the bedside table with 2 new voicemail notifications. The unknown number again. Always again. She reached for the device, then stopped. Her hand trembled, not from weakness, but from something like dread. A knock sounded at the door. Before she could answer, it opened. Mo Duca stepped inside like a storm. Her scrubs were wrinkled, her hair pulled into a messy bun, and her eyes were already blazing with fury. The smell of hospital detergent clung to her, mixed with a faint trace of perfume that had long since given up. "Girl," Mo said, voice low and dangerous. "I am going to kill him." Eleanor exhaled, relief and shame tangling in her chest. Her voice came out thin. Mo crossed the room in 3 strides and grabbed Eleanor's hand, squeezing hard, like she could transfer strength through skin. Her palm was warm, her grip fierce. "The whole floor is talking," Mo said. "He came in here and dropped divorce papers on you while you're lying here with a collapsed lung. Like it was paperwork to file. Like you were—" Mo cut herself off, jaw clenched. Her eyes flicked to the manila envelope and the pages half pulled out. Eleanor's throat tightened. "How did you—" "This is a hospital," Mo said. "Everybody knows everything within 15 minutes. Mo pulled her phone from her pocket with a sharp movement and scrolled, her thumb moving fast, angry. Then, she turned the screen toward Eleanor. The first photo hit like a slap. Grant in a restaurant, leaning in toward a blonde woman in a red dress, his hand on her arm, his smile too easy. Mo swiped. Grant's car outside an apartment building. The same woman stepping toward it, her hair catching the light. Mo swiped again. Different date, same closeness, same secrecy. Eleanor felt her stomach drop. The room tilted, subtle but undeniable, like her body had forgotten where center was. Her fingers tightened around Mo's hand until her knuckles ached. 3 years. Mo said, voice bitter. I've had to watch it for 3 years. Eleanor's lips parted, but no sound came out at first. The heart monitor's rhythm quickened again, answering her shock with cold mathematics. Why didn't you tell me? Eleanor whispered at last. Mo's anger softened into something heavier, something almost pained. Because you weren't ready, Mo said. Every time I tried, you shut me down. You explained it away. You wanted him to be good so badly you made excuses for him faster than I could speak. Mo's words landed gently, but they still landed. Eleanor blinked hard. Her eyes burned. The images on the screen stayed sharp, unforgiving. Her phone buzzed on the table. Unknown number. Mo snatched it up before Eleanor could move, her expression turning razor sharp. Who is this? Mo snapped into the receiver. She's in the hospital. Stop calling her. A pause. Mo's face changed. Her anger drained, replaced by stunned confusion. Her eyes widened, her mouth parted slightly, as if the air itself had shifted. Hold on, Mo said, slower now. She covered the mouthpiece and looked at Eleanor, disbelief written across her face. He says, Mo whispered. He says he's your father. The world went quiet for a second, as if the hospital itself had stopped breathing. Eleanor stared at Mo, her body suddenly weightless and heavy at the same time. Her pulse hummered, loud in her ears. Mo held the phone out like it was dangerous. Eleanor's fingers closed around it, numb, and then she brought it to her ear. The voice on the line was older than she remembered and still unmistakable. Eleanor, he said, careful, as if the name itself might break. Please don't hang up. Her fingers tightened around the phone. The plastic edge pressed into her palm. The room felt too bright, too exposed, the sunlight turning every surface hard and sharp. Dad, she said, and the word tasted like metal. Mo stood at the foot of the bed, arms crossed tight over her chest, eyes flicking between Eleanor's face and the phone as if she could physically intercept whatever came through it. The heart monitor kept time, a steady warning. I know what your husband is planning, Raymond Calloway said. I know because I've been watching. Eleanor let out a short, humorless breath that pulled at her ribs. Watching, she repeated. For 15 years you didn't call. Now you're watching. I know I don't deserve this conversation, he said, voice low, but you need to hear me. Grant has been moving money, marital assets, offshore accounts. He's trying to leave you with nothing. Her stomach dropped. She glanced at the manila envelope on the blanket, the inked language suddenly feeling less like a legal process and more like a trap. You don't know that, Eleanor said, but her voice lacked conviction. I do, Raymond replied. He's been doing it for 2 years, and he didn't just hide it, he used your name. The words landed with a dull thud inside her chest. My name? Eleanor whispered. Mo's expression cracked open, fury sharpening into alarm. Eleanor's fingers trembled. She tried to shift upright and pain flashed through her torso, forcing her back into the pillow. The monitor responded with a quickened beep, as if her body was arguing with her. How would you even know that? Eleanor demanded. You haven't been in my life. You weren't at my house. You weren't in my marriage. I know because 6 months ago, Raymond said, I bought his company. Silence swallowed the room. Even the hum of the lights seemed distant. Eleanor stared at the wall across from her bed, as if the words might be written there in plain print. That's not possible, she said, but it came out thinner than she meant. It is, Raymond replied. Whitmore Technologies, the controlling interest. I acquired it through Callaway Holdings. Grant doesn't know. No one knows. But I know everything he's done. Every stolen dollar, every account, every lie. Mo's mouth hung open. Her eyes widened as if she were watching someone step off a ledge. Eleanor's heart slammed against her ribs. The monitor beeped faster, the sound tightening the room around her. Why? She asked. The question scraped on its way out. Why would you do any of this? A pause filled the line. Not the pause of someone searching for the right phrasing, but the pause of someone trying not to collapse. Because, Raymond said quietly, I never stopped being your father. Eleanor laughed once, short and bitter. It hurt. She pressed her lips together, holding back the sound that wanted to become something uglier. You let her die, Eleanor said. Her voice dropped, sharper than the painkillers could soften. You had money and you let her die. And now you want to play hero? Mo moved closer to the bed, one hand hovering near Eleanor's shoulder like she could steady her. Raymond's breath came through the receiver, faint and uneven. "I know what you think I did," he said, "and I know you have every reason to hate me. But please just listen. Grant has been setting you up. If the embezzlement is discovered, your name will be attached. He's positioning you to take the fall." Eleanor's pulse throbbed in her temples. The idea slithered through her mind, cold and plausible. Grant's calm, his deadline, his confidence, the way he'd looked at her like she was already erased. "You're lying," she said, softer now, because part of her didn't believe her own denial. "I'm not," Raymond replied. "I can prove it. I have records, transfers, documents. I can protect you." "I don't need you," Eleanor snapped. "I don't need anything from you." Another pause. Then his voice returned, brittle. "I have cancer, Eleanor," he said. "Pancreatic. Stage 4. The words hit harder than any accusation. Eleanor's grip loosened. The phone slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the blanket with a hollow plastic knock. The sound seemed to echo, bouncing off tile and glass. For a moment she couldn't breathe. Not because of her lung, not because of pain, but because her mind refused to hold what it had just heard. Her vision blurred at the edges. Raymond's voice continued faintly from the speaker, distorted by distance. "Eleanor? Eleanor? Are you there?" Mo grabbed the phone and pressed it to her ear, face tight with disbelief. She spoke, but Eleanor couldn't catch the words. The room swayed. The sunlight felt too bright. The beeping felt too loud. Mo ended the call. "What the hell was that?" Mo demanded, turning back to Eleanor. Her voice was lower now, the fury rearranged into something urgent. "He says he bought Grant's company. He says Grant put your name on offshore accounts. He says he's dying." Eleanor stared up at the ceiling, the tiles crisp and merciless in the morning light. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out at first. Then, very quietly, she said, "I don't know." Mo's jaw worked as if she were trying to keep from shouting. "Okay," she said, forcing steadiness. "Okay, we don't decide anything right now. We breathe. We get facts. We—" Eleanor's eyes slipped shut. A hot pressure built behind them, threatening tears she didn't want. She swallowed, and pain flared again, reminding her that her body was still broken even if her life had just shattered further. "He called you," Mo said more softly. "He found you. That means he's serious." Eleanor opened her eyes and looked at the envelope on her blanket. The sticky tab, the blank line, the neat handwriting. "Sign here." Her phone buzzed again on the bedside table, startling them both. The same unknown number. It lit up the room in cold blue for a second before it fell silent. Mo stared at it like it was a snake. Eleanor stared, too, and something in her chest tightened. Not fear exactly, but the sense of a door cracking open somewhere in the dark. "I don't know anything anymore," Eleanor whispered. "Not what's real. Not who he is. Not who I married." Mo reached for her hand again and squeezed. "Then we start with what we can know," she said. "Proof. Evidence. Paper. The kind of thing men like Grant can't charm away." Eleanor swallowed, throat dry. Her eyes drifted back to the phone. To the call that had just ended. To the one that would come again. The room held its breath with her. And then there was a knock at the door. Firm. Deliberate. Mo turned toward it, shoulders squaring. The handle moved. The door began to open. A man Eleanor had never seen before stepped into the room with the quiet confidence of someone who belonged anywhere he walked. His suit was expensive in a way that didn't try to impress. Soft gray fabric, clean lines, no flashy pattern. A leather briefcase hung from his hand, and when he set it on the chair beside the bed, it landed with a muted, deliberate thud. The sound cut through the room's sterile hush. Mo shifted closer to Eleanor's bed, body angled like a shield. The man offered a small nod, polite and controlled. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said. "My name is Dennis Oakley. I'm an attorney." Eleanor watched his hands. They were steady, clean nails, no ring. Everything about him looked measured, rehearsed, built to survive scrutiny. "I work for Raymond Calloway," Dennis continued. "He asked me to bring you documents and clarity." Mo let out a short exhale through her nose. Skepticism sharpened into a weapon. "Clarity," she repeated. "After 15 years? That's convenient." Dennis didn't react to the tone. He opened the briefcase with 2 clicks. Metal clasps. precise. The scent of leather rose briefly, mixing with disinfectant. "I'm not here to persuade you to reconcile," Dennis said. "I'm here to provide facts." He slid a thick folder onto the bedside table. The paper edges were crisp. Tabs lined the side in neat colors. Eleanor's eyes followed them like they were road signs to a place she didn't want to go. Dennis reached in again and placed a small, sealed envelope beside the folder. Clear plastic. A tamper strip running across the top. A handwritten label on a white rectangle. Mo's gaze snapped to it. "What's that?" "Evidence," Dennis said simply. Eleanor's throat tightened. The word did not belong in her hospital room. Evidence belonged in courtrooms, interrogation rooms, crime scenes, not beside a cup of melting ice chips. Dennis flipped the folder open to the first tab and angled it so Eleanor could see. The top page held a header in stark black print, Callaway Holdings. The text beneath it looked like corporate legal language. Dates, percentages, signatures. Eleanor's eyes caught on a line that made her stomach drop. Controlling interest acquired. Her breath came shallow. The blanket shifted with it. The monitor's beeping remained steady, but she felt her pulse climbing under her skin. "6 months ago," Dennis said, "your father acquired a controlling interest in Whitmore Technologies." Mo's lips parted, then shut again, like her brain was buffering. Eleanor's voice came out thin. "Through a shell company." "Yes," Dennis said. "Callaway Holdings." The words sounded unreal, but the paper did not. The paper looked heavy, unromantic, true. "Why?" Eleanor asked, and the question came out harsher than she intended. Dennis turned another page, a section labeled Investigator's Summary. The font was smaller, the language blunt. "3 years ago," Dennis said, "Mr. Callaway retained private investigators to monitor your well-being from a distance." Mo's eyes flashed. "Monitor her?" Dennis kept his gaze on Eleanor. "He wanted to know you were safe." Eleanor's fingers curled into the blanket. The fabric bunched under her palm. He had 15 years to ask. Dennis didn't argue. He just slid the next page forward, exposing an attached photograph. Grant in a restaurant, leaning in close to a blonde woman. A date stamp printed in the corner. The same image Mo had shown her, now filed and labeled like an exhibit. "The investigators found evidence of infidelity," Dennis said. "They also found financial misconduct." Eleanor's mouth went dry again. Dennis lifted a second tab. Bank records followed, page after page. Account numbers partially redacted. Wire transfer confirmations. Amounts that made Eleanor's stomach turn. The numbers weren't just large, they were frequent, like a slow leak that had turned into a flood. "He began with smaller amounts," Dennis said, then escalated. Mo leaned over the pages, scanning. "Those are offshore," she murmured, as if naming them could make them less real. Dennis turned one more page, and Eleanor's vision narrowed to a single line. "Account holder, Eleanor Whitmore." She felt it like a cold hand closing around her throat. "That's not," Eleanor began, but the word died when she saw the next page. "An account opening form, a signature at the bottom that looked like hers if you didn't stare too long, if you didn't care too much." Dennis didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "Your husband opened accounts using your name without your knowledge," he said. "If those transfers are investigated, your identity becomes attached to his theft." Mo's hands clenched into fists at her sides. He was going to make her the fall guy. Dennis nodded once. That was the structure. Eleanor stared at the signature, and a wave of nausea rolled through her. It wasn't just betrayal now. It was danger, handcuffs, headlines, a life ruined on paper she hadn't signed. Her throat worked. "So he divorces me," she said, voice barely above a whisper, "and leaves me holding the crime." Dennis's eyes didn't flinch. "That appears to be his plan." A thin sound escaped Eleanor that wasn't a sob but wasn't far from one. Her ribs protested. She pressed her lips together and forced herself to breathe. "And my father," she said, the words sharp with bitterness, "bought the company to stop this." "To contain the damage," Dennis corrected gently. "To control the flow of information. To ensure the evidence points where it should." Mo scoffed. After letting her mother, Eleanor's stomach twisted at the mention. She turned her face slightly toward the window, the sunlight suddenly too bright. Dennis waited a beat, then spoke with the calm of someone delivering a truth he knew would hurt. "Your mother knew about the money," he said. Eleanor snapped her gaze back to him. "No." "She did," Dennis replied. "She asked your father not to use it on her treatment." The room went very still. Even Mo froze. Her anger caught mid-breath. "That's a lie," Eleanor said, and her voice shook. Dennis's eyes held something like regret. "It's not. I was present when she made him promise." Eleanor's chest tightened. Pain and grief tangled together until she couldn't separate them. She wanted to throw the folder across the room. She wanted to rip the papers apart. But her body wouldn't cooperate, and the truth on the pages wouldn't disappear just because she refused to look. "Why would she do that?" Eleanor asked, and the question came out broken. Dennis closed the folder halfway, not as an ending, but as a pause. "Because she believed in giving you a future," he said, "and because she believed you and your father would find your way back to each other when you were ready." Eleanor's eyes burned. She blinked hard, but the moisture still gathered, threatening. The monitor beeped steady, patient, almost cruel. Dennis reached into the briefcase one more time and placed a small flash drive on the bedside table. It looked ordinary. Black plastic, a metal connector, the kind of thing you could lose in a couch cushion. "This contains everything," Dennis said. "Bank records, emails, wire transfers, internal memos, proof of the accounts opened in your name, proof of the transfers, proof of the pattern." Mo stared at the flash drive like it was a live wire. Eleanor stared too, because it was. It was power in a form that could fit in the palm of her hand. Dennis set a business card beside it. The paper was thick, the print crisp. His name, his number, his office address. "I'm not here to ask you to forgive your father," Dennis said. "I'm here to offer you a choice." Eleanor's jaw tightened. "What choice?" Dennis's voice stayed even. "You can sign your husband's papers and accept whatever settlement he offers, or you can fight the divorce and the financial framing with resources behind you." Eleanor stared at the flash drive until her vision blurred slightly. The sunlight on the metal edge glinted like a knife. "I don't want his help," she said, but the words sounded smaller than they should have. Dennis nodded as if he expected that. "Then decide what you want," he said. "Not what your husband demands. Not what your father hopes. What you want." The question hung in the room, heavy and unanswered. Dennis snapped the briefcase shut. 2 clicks. Final. Controlled. "I'll leave these with you," he said. "If you call, we proceed. If you don't, nothing changes." Mo's eyes narrowed. "And if she doesn't call?" Dennis met Mo's stare without flinching. "Then Mr. Calloway will not move without her consent," he said. That was his instruction. Eleanor's fingers hovered near the flash drive. She didn't touch it yet. The plastic looked harmless, but the idea of it made her pulse rise again. Dennis turned toward the door, then paused. "One more thing," he said softly. "Your husband believes you're isolated. He believes you're weak. He's counting on you staying quiet." The words landed like a match near gasoline. Dennis left. The door clicked shut behind him, and the room seemed to exhale. Mo stared at the flash drive. "That man," she whispered, voice shaking with rage, "was going to bury you." Eleanor didn't answer. She reached for the flash drive at last, slow and careful, pain sharpening every movement. Her fingers closed around it. Cold plastic, sharp edge, real. She held it in her palm, and for the first time since the accident, something other than shock moved through her. Not peace. Not relief. Anger. Clean and bright as the morning light. The hospital discharged Eleanor on paper, but her body didn't feel discharged from anything. Mo pushed the wheelchair through the corridor, the wheels whispering over wax tile. Overhead, the fluorescent lights stuttered in long rows. Somewhere behind a door, a machine beeped in a steady rhythm, the sound following Eleanor like a metronome she couldn't escape. Each bump in the hallway sent a dull spark of pain through her ribs, and she tasted copper at the back of her throat from holding her breath too often. "You're out of your mind," Mo muttered, one hand tight on the chair's handle, the other gripping Eleanor's discharge packet like it was a leash. 3 days early, against medical advice. If your lung collapses again, I'm dragging you back myself." Eleanor kept her eyes forward. The automatic doors sighed open, and warm air hit her face like a different world. Outside smelled like exhaust and wet pavement, the sharpness grounding her more than the hospital ever had. Mo's old Honda Civic waited at the curb, paint faded, seats smelling faintly of coffee and peppermint gum. Mo folded the wheelchair with a metallic clack and shoved it into the trunk. Then she helped Eleanor into the passenger seat with careful hands. Eleanor gritted her teeth as her pelvis protested. She didn't let the sound of it escape her. Mo slammed the door, rounded the hood, and slid into the driver's seat. The ignition turned. The engine coughed, then settled into a steady rumble. Mo glanced at Eleanor. "Where are we going?" Eleanor pulled the flash drive from her pocket. It looked ridiculous in her palm, small enough to lose, heavy enough to change everything. She closed her fist around it until the edges pressed into her skin. "A coffee shop downtown," she said. Mo's eyebrows shot up. That's where Vivian Hole goes. Every morning. Her regular spot." Eleanor's gaze stayed on the windshield. Dennis's file had her routine. Mo swore under her breath and backed the car out. The tires hissed on asphalt. The city slid past in broken flashes of sunlight and shadow, every stoplight a small test of Eleanor's endurance. Each time Mo hit a pothole, pain flashed bright and white behind Eleanor's eyes. She focused on the sound of the turn signal clicking, steady and blunt, like it was something she could hold on to. Mo kept glancing over, as if waiting for Eleanor to admit this was a mistake. "You're not confronting her," Mo said finally. It wasn't a question. It was a warning. "I'm not," Eleanor replied. Her voice was quiet, but it didn't shake. "I'm recruiting her." The coffee shop sat on a corner like it belonged to a different class of people. Clean glass, minimalist signage, the kind of place where the pastries were arranged like jewelry and the prices were printed in small font, as if money was something you weren't supposed to talk about out loud. Mo parked across the street and killed the engine. The sudden quiet made Eleanor more aware of her own breathing, shallow and careful. "You want me inside?" Mo said. Eleanor shook her head. "Stay here. If I need you, I'll call." Mo's mouth tightened, but she nodded. She watched Eleanor's hand move to the door handle. "Be smart," Mo said. "If she screams, if she runs, if she calls him." "I know," Eleanor said. Then she opened the door. Cold air hit her face. The sidewalk felt too hard under her shoes. Eleanor stood slowly, using the car door for leverage. Her body trembled with the effort, not weakness, but resistance. She gripped her walker and forced herself upright, step by step, toward the entrance. Inside, warmth wrapped around her coffee, steamed milk, sugar. The espresso machine hissed like a small storm behind the counter. Cups clinked. A barista called a name. The noise was normal, almost offensive in how normal it was. Eleanor chose a table in the corner, back against the wall, where she could see the door. She set her walker beside her chair and lowered herself down with controlled slowness, jaw clenched against the pane. She checked her phone. 8:15. She waited. At 8:15 exactly, the bell above the door chimed, bright and cheerful. Vivian Hole walked in. Blonde hair pulled smooth, a tailored dress, heels that clicked lightly against the floor. She carried herself like a woman who had learned the rules of power and followed them well. She scanned the room with quick, practiced eyes, then she saw Eleanor. Vivian stopped. The color drained from her face so fast it looked like someone had flipped a switch. Her hand tightened around her purse strap. For a split second, Eleanor thought she would turn and walk right back out. Then something shifted in Vivian's expression. Not courage, not defiance. Decision. Vivian walked to the table like she was approaching a courtroom witness stand. She set her purse down carefully and sat. "I was wondering when you'd find me," Vivian said. Her voice was steady, but her fingers trembled around the lid of her coffee cup once it arrived. The barista set it down with a soft ceramic knock and moved away, oblivious. Eleanor studied her. She had expected smugness, a victor's satisfaction, a smile that said she had won. Instead, she saw exhaustion, fear, and something that looked uncomfortably like relief. "You were expecting this," Eleanor said. "I was expecting something," Vivian replied. Grant's wife showing up felt inevitable. Eleanor's grip tightened around the edge of the table. The wood was smooth beneath her fingertips, and she focused on that texture to keep her voice even. Does everyone at the company know? Eleanor asked. Or just the ones he's charmed? Vivian flinched at the word charmed. People suspect, she said. Grant wasn't subtle. Eleanor let the silence stretch. The espresso machine hissed again. Someone laughed near the window. The normal sounds pressed against the tension like a soundtrack that didn't match the scene. You didn't know he was married, Eleanor said. Not at first, Vivian answered quickly. He told me he was divorced. By the time I learned the truth, I was already in too deep. The word deep hung between them, heavy with implication. Eleanor leaned forward an inch, careful with her ribs. You tried to end it. Vivian's eyes flicked toward the door, then back. 3 times, she admitted, and every time he threatened me. Threatened you how? Vivian's mouth tightened. Her gaze dropped to her hands. When she spoke again, her voice lowered. He threatened my job, my reputation. He said he'd ruin me if I ever talked. He said he had lawyers who would make sure I took the fall for anything that went wrong. Eleanor felt a cold clarity settle in her chest. The same shape as the documents Dennis had shown her. A pattern. What else did he pull you into? Eleanor asked. Vivian's fingers curled around the cup until her knuckles paled. Money, she whispered. He used me to move it. Accounts in my name that I never opened. Transfers I never authorized. If anyone investigates the embezzlement, my name is everywhere. Eleanor's stomach tightened. Vivian's voice cracked, just slightly. I could go to prison for crimes I didn't commit. Eleanor held her gaze. You have proof. Vivian's eyes sharpened. I have everything, she said. Statements, emails, recordings. I've been collecting it for months, trying to figure out how to get out alive. Why didn't you go to the police? Vivian gave a short, bitter laugh that held no humor. Because he made me believe he'd win. Eleanor opened her purse and set her own flash drive on the table, not sliding it forward, just letting it exist where Vivian could see it. There's another way, Eleanor said. Vivian's eyes dropped to the drive. What way? My father owns Whitmore Technologies, Eleanor said, each word measured. Grant doesn't know. No one does. But my father has access to everything. Vivian stared at her like she'd spoken in a language she couldn't parse. That's not possible, she said. The majority owner is a European parent company, Callaway Holdings or something. Eleanor didn't blink. Callaway is my maiden name? Vivian's mouth fell open. For a heartbeat, she looked younger. Not the polished executive, just a woman realizing the floor beneath her might finally hold. Eleanor kept her voice low. I need what you collected. To match it against what my father has. And in return, I make sure the investigation clears your name. The forged documents get traced back to Grant. The accounts get tied to his fingerprints, not yours. Vivian's hands shook harder now. That sounds too clean. It's not clean, Eleanor said. It's just possible. Vivian stared at Eleanor for a long moment, searching for a lie. A trap. A catch. Then she reached into her purse. Her fingers came out holding a flash drive identical in size and shape to Eleanor's. She placed it on the table with a small, controlled tap. Plastic on wood. I've carried this for 6 months, Vivian said, waiting for the right person. Eleanor didn't touch it yet. Her pulse beat hard in her throat. Vivian's eyes narrowed, the fear turning into something sharper. I'm not doing this for you, she said. I'm doing it because I'm not going to prison for that man. Eleanor slid the drive into her palm. It felt heavier than it should. Thank you, Eleanor said, voice almost flat with focus. Don't thank me yet, Vivian replied. She leaned in, close enough that Eleanor could smell her perfume, clean and expensive, layered over anxiety. Grant is dangerous when he's cornered. Eleanor met her eyes. He's already cornered. Vivian's gaze flicked down to Eleanor's walker, then back up. Something like regret passed across her face. For what it's worth, Vivian said quietly, I'm sorry. Eleanor held the flash drive tighter. You're here now, she said. That matters. Vivian stood, purse strap sliding over her shoulder. Her chair legs scraped softly against the floor. She hesitated, eyes cutting toward the door as if she expected it to burst open. Then, her phone buzzed. Vivian glanced down at the screen. The color drained from her face again, faster than before. She turned the phone slightly, just enough for Eleanor to see the notification glow in stark letters. Doorbell camera, Grant is outside. The coffee shop suddenly felt too warm, too loud, too exposed. The espresso machine hissed again like steam escaping a pressure valve. Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. He found me. Vivian's phone screen dimmed, but the words stayed behind Eleanor's eyes as if they had been stamped there. Grant is outside. The coffee shop's warmth suddenly felt thin. Every laugh near the window sounded too loud. Every clink of porcelain felt like a signal. Eleanor slid the second flash drive into her purse with controlled slowness, forcing her fingers to behave. Across from her, Vivian's hands hovered over her cup without touching it, trembling as if caffeine could steady fear. Go, Eleanor said quietly. Vivian's eyes snapped up. I can't, she breathed. If I leave, he already will, Eleanor cut in low and firm. But you don't have to meet him at your door. Vivian swallowed. Her gaze flicked to the entrance, then to the street beyond the glass, as if she could see danger through reflections. Eleanor didn't ask for details. She didn't offer comfort. She offered a path. Take a back exit, Eleanor said. Call a friend. Change your route. And don't answer him. Vivian nodded once, sharp and desperate, then stood too quickly. Her chair scraped against the floor, a brief, ugly sound that turned two heads at the counter. She forced a smile at no one, grabbed her purse, and walked away like she wasn't running. Eleanor watched until the door closed behind her, the bell chiming bright and wrong. Outside, Mo was already out of the car, scanning the sidewalk with her jaw clenched. Get in, Mo said before Eleanor could speak. Eleanor didn't argue. She moved as fast as her body allowed, pain flaring in her ribs with every step. Mo opened the passenger door and helped her down into the seat, hands careful but urgent. The seatbelt clicked into place with a finality Eleanor felt in her teeth. Mo slammed the door and slid behind the wheel. The engine started with a rough growl. The car pulled away from the curb too quickly, tires whispering against pavement. Mo looked in the rearview mirror like she expected to see Grant's car turning the corner. Did he follow her? Mo asked. I don't know, Eleanor said. Her voice sounded steady, but her hands were cold. She reached into her purse and touched the two flash drives, counting them by feel the way someone counted a pulse. 2 small rectangles of plastic. 2 years of theft. 2 lives used as shields. Mo exhaled hard. Where to? Eleanor gave her the address. Raymond Calloway's estate sat outside the city where the roads widened and the noise thinned. The closer they got, the more the air changed. Exhaust gave way to damp earth. Concrete gave way to long stretches of grass and trees that moved lazily in the wind. At the gate, a camera pivoted with a soft mechanical whir. A keypad glowed. Mo rolled down the window, and before she could reach for it, the gate slid open on its own. Silent, smooth, like permission granted from a distance. Mo's hands tightened on the wheel. That's unsettling. Eleanor didn't answer. Her attention stayed on the drive ahead, the long, private road lined with trimmed hedges and evenly spaced lights. The estate appeared slowly, not rising suddenly but unfolding, stone and glass set back from the world like a decision. When Mo pulled into the circular drive, a man was already waiting at the front steps. Dennis Oakley stood with his hands folded in front of him, expression composed. Behind him, the tall door opened, and Raymond stepped out. Eleanor's breath caught. She had built a villain in her mind for 15 years, a man made entirely of absence and unforgivable choices. The person standing there didn't match that shape. Raymond looked thinner than she expected, his suit hanging loose on his frame, his face drawn tight by exhaustion. His eyes, though his eyes were the same hazel green she saw in her own mirror, familiar in a way that made her stomach twist. Mo cut the engine. The quiet that followed was deep, broken only by a distant bird call and the soft ticking of the car cooling. Eleanor pushed the door open slowly. Standing took effort. Pain lanced through her pelvis. She paused, swallowed, forced air into her lungs with care. Mo hovered close, ready to catch her if she folded. Raymond descended the steps, one at a time, measured, as if he didn't trust his own body either. Eleanor, he said. Her name sounded different in his mouth. Not casual, not owned, like something precious he wasn't sure he had the right to touch. She didn't move toward him. She didn't offer him anything. She just met his gaze and held it. Thank you for coming, Raymond said, voice low. Eleanor's jaw clenched. Don't, she replied. Don't thank me like this is normal. Raymond's eyes flickered with something that might have been shame. He nodded once, accepting the boundary without argument. Dennis stepped forward. If you'd like to sit, he said, gesturing toward the open door. The study is prepared. Inside, the house smelled faintly of wood polish and fireplace smoke, warm and clean in a way that felt curated. The floor beneath Eleanor's feet was smooth stone. Her steps echoed softly, each one a reminder of her healing body and the anger keeping her upright. They entered a study lined with books. A fire crackled in the hearth, despite the mild season outside, its heat a constant, living thing. Leather chairs faced each other across a low table. On the table sat a glass tray with water and a folded cloth napkin that looked untouched. Eleanor lowered herself into a chair carefully, breath tight between her teeth. Mo stayed standing behind her shoulder, arms crossed, eyes hard on Raymond like she was daring him to say the wrong thing. Raymond sat opposite Eleanor. He didn't lean back. He didn't try to take space. He looked like a man keeping himself small on purpose. Dennis remained near the door, quiet, professional, present. Eleanor placed both flash drives on the table. The plastic made a soft, blunt sound when it hit the wood. Raymond's gaze dropped to them, then lifted back to her face. Dennis told me your meeting with Vivian went well. It went, Eleanor said. Her voice was flat. She gave me what she had. She's cooperating because she doesn't want to be destroyed. Raymond's mouth tightened. Smart. Eleanor's fingers curled slightly on the armrest, knuckles whitening. The fire snapped and shifted, throwing light across his cheekbones. In that light, his illness was clearer, the slight hollowness at his temples. The way his skin looked stretched too thin. Eleanor held his gaze. I need the truth, she said. Not the version that makes you look better. Not the version that makes me feel guilty for being angry. Raymond swallowed, slow. All right, he said. Eleanor's voice sharpened. Dennis said my mother knew about your money, that she made you promise not to use it on her treatment. I want to hear it from you. Raymond looked at the fire for a long moment, as if the flames could rewrite the past into something bearable. When he spoke, his voice was rougher. It's true, he said. She knew. Eleanor's chest tightened. The anger that had been carrying her suddenly found its target. Why? She demanded. Why would she do that? Raymond turned back to her. His eyes were wet but steady. Because she knew where the money came from, he said. Eleanor's breath caught. Mo shifted behind her, a small movement like bracing. I wasn't always a good man, Raymond continued. The words came carefully, as if they cost him. I made choices, business choices. I hurt people. I justified it at the time. Your mother knew the details. She knew what I had done. The fire crackled again, louder, as if punctuating the sentence. She told me, Raymond said, that if she took that money for herself, she'd be using blood to buy more days. She wouldn't do it. She made me promise. She made me swear I'd save it for you. Eleanor's throat tightened until it hurt. So you just let her die? Raymond's voice fractured. What choice did I have? He said. And for the first time, he sounded less like a billionaire and more like a man who had failed at something sacred. She was my wife. She asked me to honor her, and I did. And it destroyed me. Eleanor stared at him, fighting the sting behind her eyes. The room felt too warm, too quiet, the kind of quiet that made truth echo. Raymond's hands rested on his knees. They were thinner than she remembered, veins visible beneath the skin. If you want to hate me, he said softly, you have every right. I hate myself for it. Eleanor's fingers dug into the leather armrest. Her voice came out low. Then why watch me? She asked. Why buy his company? Why now? Raymond lifted his gaze. Because she asked me to, he said. She asked me to protect you from a distance, to intervene only if you truly needed it. Mo let out a small, disbelieving sound, but she didn't interrupt. Raymond glanced toward a desk in the corner, then back to Eleanor. There's something else, he said. Eleanor's stomach tightened. What? Raymond didn't reach for her. He didn't try to close the space between them. He simply said, I have letters. The word hung in the air like a key. Eleanor's mouth went dry. Letters. Raymond nodded once. From your mother, he said. She wrote them for you. Over the years, I kept them because she asked me to. She told me to wait until you were ready. Eleanor stared at him, her anger pressing against something softer and unfamiliar. The firelight flickered across her hands on the chair, across the 2 flash drives on the table, across the distance between a daughter and a father who had lived as strangers for too long. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted. Where are they? She asked. The restaurant lighting made everything look expensive and forgiving. Candles trembled inside thick glass, throwing soft gold across white tablecloths. Silverware lay perfectly aligned, untouched by the noise of the city outside. Somewhere behind the bar, ice clinked against crystal with a clean, satisfying sound, like nothing in this room had ever been broken. Eleanor arrived early. Her heels clicked lightly on the floor as she moved toward the host stand, each step measured. She didn't rush, even when a sharp ache flared in her pelvis, even when her ribs reminded her they weren't finished healing. She wore a navy dress that sat smooth against her skin and pearl earrings that felt cool against her neck. Armor disguised as elegance. The host led her to a corner table. The chair glided back with a soft scrape. Eleanor sat carefully, exhaling through her nose as she settled into the seat. The pain sat behind her eyes, contained, waiting. She kept her posture straight anyway. Her phone buzzed once on the table. Dennis, in position. Her thumb hovered over the screen, then she set it face down. The glass of water beside it caught the candlelight and fractured it into small reflections. At 7 sharp, Grant walked in. He wore confidence the way he wore his suit, tailored, polished, effortless. His smile arrived first, bright and practiced, aimed at the room as if it belonged to him. He spotted Eleanor and adjusted course without hesitation, shoulders loose, steps smooth. He leaned down and kissed her cheek like they were old friends. His cologne reached her a second later, familiar and suddenly nauseating. You look good, Grant said, sliding into the chair across from her. Much better than when I saw you. Eleanor held his gaze. Thank you, she said evenly. I'm healing. Grant lifted 2 fingers toward a server without looking. A bottle of the Barolo, he said, already choosing for both of them. The server nodded and disappeared. Grant smiled wider, as if he'd just restored order. I'm glad you wanted to meet, he said, voice smooth. We should handle this like adults, no drama. No lawyers dragging things out, just a clean break. Eleanor's fingers rested lightly on the edge of her napkin. The linen felt crisp, almost stiff. She didn't touch the menu. A clean break, she repeated. Grant nodded, pleased. I had my attorney draw up a revised settlement, more generous than the original. He tapped the table once, a small, impatient motion. House, car, enough to cover your medical bills. It's more than fair. More than fair. The phrase hit her like a bitter joke. She watched him say it as if it were a gift, as if he were the injured party making peace. Eleanor lifted her glass of water and took a small sip. The cold steadied her throat. She set it down with a soft clink. I've been thinking, she said. Grant's smile didn't move, but his eyes sharpened slightly, like he was listening for leverage. About what? About our marriage, Eleanor said. 12 years. I keep replaying it. Grant's expression held. Nostalgia isn't helpful, Eleanor. It's not nostalgia, she replied. Her voice remained calm, almost conversational. It's a question. Grant leaned back a fraction, as if settling into a negotiation. All right. Eleanor let a beat of silence sit between them. Around them, the restaurant murmured soft laughter, low music, the clink of glass. Normal life continuing. When did you change? She asked. Was it gradual, or was there a moment? Grant's smile flickered for the first time. Just a hairline crack. I don't know what you mean. You do, Eleanor said. The server returned with the wine, set the bottle down, and began to uncork it. The cork came free with a muted pop. Grant's gaze stayed locked on Eleanor. The mask slid back into place. You're still emotional, he said gently, like he was speaking to a child. It's understandable after an accident. Eleanor watched the server pour. Dark red liquid curved into the glass like velvet. I'm curious, Eleanor continued, ignoring his tone. When did you decide I was no longer useful? Grant's jaw tightened for a second, then smoothed. That's unfair. Eleanor didn't smile. Is it? Grant lifted his glass, inhaled the aroma like he was savoring control. I came here to be reasonable. Eleanor leaned forward just slightly, careful with her ribs. Did you think I would sign without reading? Grant's eyes narrowed. I think you know what's best for you. Eleanor's gaze didn't waver. When did you start sleeping with Vivian? The wineglass froze halfway to Grant's mouth. For a brief second, something raw flashed across his face, panic, surprise, the ugly reality beneath the charm. Then it was gone, replaced by indignation. Eleanor, he said, low and warning. Be careful. Careful, she echoed. Like you were careful opening accounts in my name. Grant set the glass down too hard. The base clicked sharply against the table. A nearby diner glanced over, then looked away. I don't know what you've been told, Grant said, voice tight. But you're spiraling. You're reaching. Eleanor reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. She didn't unlock it yet. She simply set it on the table between them. I've seen the photos, she said. I've seen the dates. Grant's gaze dropped, then lifted again. The smile was gone now. His eyes looked colder. Who showed you? He asked. Eleanor didn't answer the question. I've seen bank statements, she continued. Accounts I never opened, transfers I never authorized. Grant's throat moved. He swallowed once. That's absurd, he said. You can't prove any of that. Eleanor's voice stayed level, almost bored. Actually, I can. The server hovered with the bottle, unsure whether to leave. Grant made a small, dismissive motion. The server stepped away quickly, relieved. Eleanor's fingers brushed the edge of her glass, feeling the condensation. She let her gaze settle on Grant's watch. A thin strip of metal, perfectly fitted, always present, always ticking. I've had some interesting conversations lately, Eleanor said. With my father. Grant's face tightened as if struck. Your father, he repeated, and the word sounded like he didn't belong in this story. We've been reconnecting, Eleanor said. Grant's eyes sharpened with suspicion. After 15 years, Eleanor nodded once. He's been very informative, especially about Whitmore Technologies. Grant's posture stiffened. His fingers tapped once against the stem of his wineglass, a nervous tic he didn't know he had. What about it? He asked. Eleanor tilted her head slightly. Did you know someone has been tracking your offshore transfers? Grant's gaze snapped. Offshore transfers, he repeated, a fraction too fast. Eleanor watched him carefully. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't lean in like a threat. She simply let the words exist. Every wire, she said. Every invoice. Every account. Grant's lips parted, then closed again. His face paled by degrees, as if blood was evacuating in real time. You're bluffing, he said finally, but the word came out weaker than he intended. Eleanor's mouth curved into a small smile that held no warmth. Vivian was very cooperative, she said. Her evidence matches perfectly. Grant's eyes flashed. Anger rose to cover fear like paint over rot. What do you want? The question came out clipped, businesslike. The mask searching for its old shape. Eleanor didn't hesitate. A fair settlement, she said. An accurate accounting of everything you hid. Half of what's mine. And you stop using my name as your shield. Grant's jaw clenched. And if I refuse... Eleanor's smile didn't change. Then the evidence goes where it belongs. Grant stared at her, breathing shallow now, watching her as if she had become someone else. Candlelight danced across his face, making his eyes look darker. You wouldn't, he said. Eleanor stood. The motion sent pain through her bones like a warning flare, but she didn't let it show. She picked up her purse. She placed a bill on the table with deliberate calm. Grant's eyes tracked the money as if he couldn't understand the gesture. Eleanor leaned closer, just enough that only he could hear her clearly over the restaurant's murmur. Oh, she said softly, and Grant. His gaze snapped back to her. Your deadline is Friday, Eleanor added. I think that's more than fair. She turned and walked away. Behind her, Grant pushed his chair back too quickly. It scraped hard against the floor, loud enough to make 2 diners flinch. Eleanor, he hissed, then louder. Eleanor. His voice followed her through the room, shifting from anger to panic to something that sounded almost like pleading. She didn't look back. The exit sign glowed above the door like a promise. Outside, The night air hit her face cold and sharp. Mo's car waited at the curb, engine already running. Mo leaned across the passenger seat and shoved the door open. "Get in," she said. Eleanor slid inside, and the warmth from the heater rushed over her hands. Only then did her fingers begin to shake. Mo looked at her, eyes bright with satisfaction and worry. "How did it go?" Eleanor stared straight ahead, watching the restaurant's front windows blur slightly as Mo pulled away. "I made him sweat," Eleanor said. Mo let out a short laugh. "Good. He deserves it." Eleanor's breath came out in a slow exhale, the adrenaline draining away and leaving a hollow ache behind it. "I can't believe I did that," she whispered. Mo glanced at her. "You did what you had to." Eleanor's eyes closed briefly, then opened again. The city lights streaked across the windshield like moving bars. Mo's phone buzzed in the cup holder. She glanced at it, then swore softly. Eleanor's stomach tightened. "What?" Mo held the screen up for Eleanor to see. A new email notification, bold subject line glowing in the dark. Certified letter notice of legal action. Eleanor stared at the words until they felt like they were burning into her vision. Grant wasn't going quietly. The certified letter arrived with the weight of a threat. Eleanor held the envelope over the kitchen counter, watching the light catch the embossed stamp. Her name sat on the front like an accusation. When she tore it open, the paper inside slid out crisp and cold, covered in legal language that looked clean enough to be innocent. It wasn't, Grant's attorney wrote, as if Eleanor were the criminal. The words were sharp, confident, designed to be forwarded, quoted, believed. They claimed she had orchestrated the offshore accounts, coerced Grant, manipulated the company, and was now attempting to frame him. The letter demanded she retract her false allegations, surrender claims to the house, and accept financial penalties for emotional distress. The air in the room felt thinner with every line. Mo stood across from her, arms crossed, reading over Eleanor's shoulder. The smell of tea rose from a mug that had gone untouched, steam fading into nothing. "He is doubling down," Eleanor said, voice flat. Mo's laugh was short and furious. "He's not doubling down. He's trying to bury you." Eleanor's phone buzzed, then buzzed again. She flipped it over. Unknown number. Private number. A third call labeled only as a blocked contact. She didn't answer. A voicemail notification appeared almost immediately. The screen lit her fingers in pale blue. Mo leaned in, jaw tight. Eleanor pressed play. A man's voice, formal and clipped, filled the kitchen speaker. "Mrs. Whitmore, this is Director." The name cut off under a rush of static. "I'm calling regarding governance concerns and fiduciary exposure. Your name appears on multiple accounts. We need clarification today." The message ended. Silence rushed back in. Mo stared at Eleanor. That was a board member. Eleanor's stomach tightened until it hurt. She could almost feel the ink on those documents like fingerprints on her skin. The phone buzzed again. Another call. She let it go. Her email pinged. A subject line flashed across the lock screen in bold text. Emergency governance call, 2 p.m. Eleanor stared at it as if it might change if she blinked. Mo reached for her arm. "Sit," she said, voice softer now, but no less urgent. "Your breathing's getting weird." Eleanor didn't realize she had been holding her breath until she exhaled and pain pulled at her ribs. She lowered herself into a chair, slow and controlled, the edge of the seat pressing into her healing pelvis. Her phone buzzed again. Another board call. Another voicemail. The sound was relentless. A swarm. Grant's whisper campaign wasn't just gossip now. It had reached the only place it mattered. Governance. Liability. Fear. Dennis answered on the second ring when Eleanor called, his voice steady as a metronome. "They've started," he said before she could speak. Eleanor swallowed. "They're calling me." "Yes," Dennis replied. "He's pushing the narrative that you're unstable and culpable. He's trying to force the board into a defensive posture. If they panic, they'll look for the easiest scapegoat." "My name is on the accounts," Eleanor said. Her voice cracked on the last word. Dennis paused for half a beat. "That's why we move first." Mo snatched a pen and slapped a notepad on the table. The pen clicked in and out like a pulse. Eleanor's email pinged again. A second subject line flashed. Board packet preliminary review. Offshore accounts. The kitchen felt suddenly too small, too exposed. Eleanor pictured Grant in a different room, smiling calmly while phones rang and people whispered. He would be checking his watch. He would be watching the clock tick toward a victory he believed was inevitable. Eleanor's hand tightened around her phone until her knuckles whitened. "I want proof in my hands," she said. Dennis's voice didn't waver. "Come to the estate," he said. "Now, we'll assemble the forensic packet and lock chain of custody before the board meeting." Eleanor's chest rose carefully. "He's making them think I did it." Dennis exhaled once, quiet. "Let him," he said. "It makes the fall cleaner." Mo stood immediately, already grabbing keys. "We're going," she said, tone leaving no room for argument. The drive to the estate felt longer than it should have. Every red light was an insult. Every turn made Eleanor wince. Her phone kept vibrating in her lap like it was alive, the screen lighting up again and again, board member calls, blocked numbers, email pings stacking like a countdown. Emergency. Clarification. Exposure. When they arrived, Dennis met them in the entry hall with a folder thick enough to break a wrist. The estate smelled of wood and fire, warm and controlled, but Eleanor felt none of it. She followed Dennis into the study like she was walking into a storm shelter. The table was covered in paper. Bank statements, wire confirmations, account opening documents, printed emails with headers visible, a timeline sheet with dates aligned in ruthless order. Dennis pulled on a pair of thin medical gloves. The latex snapped quietly around his wrists. Mo's eyes narrowed. "That's dramatic." "It's necessary," Dennis said. He reached for a clear plastic evidence bag, the kind used for things that mattered in court. He laid it flat on the table, smoothing it with his gloved hands until there were no wrinkles. He slid the first flash drive into the bag, then the second. The plastic crinkled softly, a sound that made Eleanor's stomach turn. Dennis placed an intake form beside the bag. He didn't speak yet. He picked up a stamp. The stamp hit the paper with a heavy thud. The ink read like a bruise. Received 9:41 a.m. Eleanor watched, transfixed, as if the sound had pinned reality into place. Dennis signed the form in clean, controlled strokes. Then he turned the bag so the tamper seal faced Eleanor and Mo, the strip bright and unbroken. He pulled the seal closed. A sharp ZZZT cut through the room. He wrote across the seam with a black marker. Date, time, initials, chain of custody. Mo stopped breathing for a second, then exhaled hard. "Okay," she whispered. "Okay, that's real." Eleanor stared at the bag, at the drives trapped inside clear plastic like insects in amber. Power, sealed and documented, no longer a rumor. Dennis slid a printed page toward Eleanor. "Look," he said. At the top was a scanned form, account opening authorization. Under the signature line was Eleanor's name. The signature looked like hers from a distance. Dennis pointed to a small box on the bottom right. Digital capture metadata, device ID, location, timestamp. Eleanor's eyes locked on the timestamp. 9:14 a.m., 6 months prior. Her skin went cold. Dennis tapped the page once. "This is where we break him," he said. Mo leaned in. "And the board calls." Dennis nodded. "They're scared," he said. "Fear makes people pick the nearest target. Today, Grant wants that target to be Eleanor." Eleanor's throat tightened. She looked at her own name, printed on the documents, her identity turned into a weapon against her. If Grant won this moment, she wouldn't just lose a divorce, she would lose her freedom. The realization landed with brutal clarity. The offshore accounts carried Eleanor's name. If Grant won, she took the fall. Mo's hand closed over Eleanor's shoulder, warm and steady. "We're not letting that happen," she said. Dennis slid another sheet forward. A calendar printout. Quarterly board meeting today. Location: Whitmore Technologies, Executive Boardroom. Time: 10 a.m. Eleanor stared at the time, the numbers sharp and unforgiving. Dennis's voice lowered. "Grant believes he's contained the damage," he said. "He believes he's walked you into a corner and taught the board to fear you." Eleanor's fingers curled around the edge of the table. The wood dug into her skin. "Then we change the room," she said. Dennis's eyes held hers. "Exactly," he replied. "We let him walk into his own end." Outside the study, the house was quiet. Inside, everything was moving. Phones buzzed. Printers whirred. paper stacked. The evidence bag sat on the table like a sealed promise. Eleanor rose slowly. Pain flared, but she didn't pause. She forced air into her lungs and straightened her shoulders. Mo grabbed her keys. Dennis lifted the evidence bag carefully, as if it contained a living thing. They were going to the boardroom, and Grant had no idea who would be sitting at the head of the table when he arrived. The elevator doors opened with a clean metallic ding. Grant Whitmore stepped out first, suit flawless, shoulders relaxed, a tablet tucked under his arm like a shield. The hallway outside the executive boardroom smelled faintly of polished wood and new carpet adhesive, the kind of sterile luxury companies paid for when they wanted power to feel permanent. He adjusted his cufflinks as he walked, the soft click of metal against metal, matching the quiet confidence in his stride. Inside, voices murmured behind the frosted glass wall. Chairs shifted. Paper slid across a table. The familiar sounds of a meeting assembling into order. Grant glanced at his watch. 10 minutes early. Good. He liked arriving early. It made other people wait. He pushed the boardroom door open with a smooth motion and stepped into a room that had always belonged to him. The conference table stretched long beneath recessed lights, glossy enough to reflect faces back at themselves. The city skyline stared through the windows, gray-blue in the morning haze. Directors sat in their usual seats, suits and blazers and carefully arranged expressions. Legal counsel lingered near the wall. A carafe of coffee steamed on a sideboard, dark and bitter. Grant's eyes moved automatically to the head of the table, and stopped. Eleanor sat there. Navy dress, pearl earrings. Her posture straight, hands folded calmly in front of her as if the chair had been made for her and no one had ever questioned it. She looked paler than she used to, and there was a slight stiffness in the way she held her shoulders, but her gaze was steady, clear, unafraid. For a second, Grant's brain refused to assemble the image into meaning. What? His voice caught. He forced it back into place with a shallow inhale. Eleanor! No one corrected him. No one offered an explanation. The room's silence pressed down like a weight. Grant's eyes flicked to the directors. Some looked away. One adjusted their glasses and stared at the table. Another held their pen too tightly, knuckles pale. The energy in the room felt different, controlled, yes, but colder, as if something had already been decided and everyone was just waiting for the formalities. A man Grant didn't recognize stood near the head of the table. Expensive suit, expression neutral, a briefcase placed on the table with careful precision. The name tag on his lapel read, Dennis Oakley, General Counsel, Callaway Holdings. Grant's stomach tightened. Callaway Holdings was a parent company line item in his reports, a faceless entity, a European shell the board barely discussed. The man opened his briefcase without speaking. A quiet click, then another. He pulled on thin latex gloves. The material snapped softly at his wrists, a sound that seemed too clinical for a corporate meeting. Grant forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I'm not sure what this is, he said, letting a laugh slip out as if the situation were merely awkward. But we're here for quarterly earnings. Dennis didn't look at him. He set a clear plastic evidence bag on the table. The bag was transparent. Inside were 2 flash drives, their metal ends catching the overhead light. A tamper seal ran along the top, signed over in black marker. Across the label, a timestamp was visible in bold ink, stamped like a bruise. Received 9:41 a.m. Grant's throat went dry. Dennis placed an intake form beside the bag and flattened it with his gloved palm, smoothing it like a mortician. He didn't speak yet. He picked up a stamp. Thud. The sound jolted through the room. The ink bled into paper. Grant's eyes snapped to Eleanor's hands. They didn't move, not even a twitch. Dennis finally looked up, his gaze sweeping the room with quiet authority. The agenda has changed, he said. Grant's smile tightened. Excuse me? Dennis's voice remained even. Callaway Holdings, as controlling interest holder, is exercising governance authority. Today's meeting is to address financial irregularities. Grant let out a short breath that could have been a scoff. Financial irregularities, he repeated, as if tasting the phrase. We can address that after. Specifically, Dennis continued, cutting through him without raising his voice. A pattern of embezzlement spanning 3 years. The word embezzlement landed like a slap. A director shifted in their chair. A pen clicked. Someone cleared their throat and stopped. Grant's jaw clenched. "That's absurd," he said. "This is a hostile maneuver. You can't." Dennis reached into his briefcase and slid a packet across the table. The paper made a soft shh as it moved, stopping precisely in front of Grant. On the top page was a wire transfer confirmation. Under the authorization line sat Grant's signature. Grant stared at it, his eyes narrowing, pupils tightening. "That's forged." Dennis turned the page with a gloved finger and revealed another transfer. Another signature. Another amount. Larger. Then an account opening form. An email printout with full headers. An invoice labeled internal, falsified. Each page was tabbed, numbered, time-stamped. The structure of it was ruthless. Eleanor's voice entered the room quietly, like a blade sliding free. "They're not forged," she said, "and you know it." Grant's gaze snapped to her. "You," he hissed, the charm gone now, replaced by something raw. "You don't have the authority to be here." Eleanor didn't flinch. "I do," she replied. Dennis lifted another sheet and placed it upright in a clear stand so everyone could see it. A scanned document. A small box in the lower corner. Digital capture metadata. Device ID. Location. Timestamp. The timestamp read 9:14 a.m. Grant's eyes flickered, a fraction too fast, as if he'd recognized the trap before his brain could deny it. Dennis's tone stayed clinical. "This form was created on a device registered to Mr. Whitmore's executive assistant's office network. The IP trail and device identifier match." Grant's mouth opened, then shut. Dennis continued. "We also have testimony from Vivian Hull." He didn't glance at Eleanor when he said the name, but the room reacted. Several directors exchanged quick looks. A small ripple moved through the table. Grant's face hardened. "Vivian," he said, voice rising. "That's your source? A disgruntled employee you manipulated?" Dennis slid another document forward. A sworn statement with a notary stamp. The ink of the stamp was still dark, sharp-edged. Grant's gaze locked on it. His breathing grew shallow. Dennis added, "Additionally, federal investigators have been informed. The company has been approached regarding cooperation." Grant's composure fractured. "This is insane," he snapped, voice too loud for the polished room. "You're all letting her orchestrate this because she's angry about a divorce. She's unstable, He stopped himself too late. Several directors stiffened. One of them, a woman Grant had dismissed for years as ornamental, lifted her chin. "We have all received your legal letter," she said, voice calm and icy. "The one blaming your wife for accounts opened under her name." Grant turned on her. "Because it's true." The lie sounded desperate, thin. It didn't fit the weight of the evidence on the table. Dennis's gloved hand tapped the metadata page once, softly. "If it's true," he said, "then explain why the device trail leads to your office network." Grant's eyes darted. He swallowed. "That could be someone could have." He reached as if to grab the packet, to control it, to tear it in half and make the truth disappear. A security guard stepped forward from the door. Grant froze. Dennis's voice didn't change. "We will proceed to a vote on immediate suspension of Mr. Whitmore's duties," he announced. Grant's head snapped up. "You can't do that without—" "All in favor," Dennis said. Hands rose around the table, one after another, smooth, unanimous. Grant stared at them, incredulous, as if he were seeing faces for the first time. Dennis didn't pause. "Vote to fully cooperate with federal investigators." Hands rose again, a silent wave of finality. "Vote to terminate Mr. Whitmore's employment for cause, effective immediately." Every hand. Grant's face twisted. Rage surged forward to cover terror. He slammed both palms on the glossy table, the sound sharp and ugly. "You owe me," he snarled. "I built this company. I made you people millions." The director who had spoken earlier leaned forward slightly, eyes hard. "You stole from this company," she said. "You lied to this board, and you tried to use your wife as a shield." Grant turned toward Eleanor, eyes blazing. "This is your doing." Eleanor rose slowly. Pain flashed through her body, but she didn't let it touch her expression. She walked with careful steps around the table, the soft tap of her heels sounding louder than it should have in the silence. She stopped beside Grant's chair and looked down at him. Her face held no anger now, no pleading, no fear, just clarity. 12 years taught me who you are, she said quietly. The evidence taught everyone else. Grant's throat worked. His eyes flicked toward the door. Toward escape. The security guards stepped closer. Mr. Whitmore, Dennis said, you are required to leave the premises immediately. Grant's chair scraped back. He stood too fast, knocking his glass of water so it sloshed onto the table. The water spread across the polished surface, warping reflections, soaking paper at the edge of the packet. He didn't apologize. He couldn't. His hands shook. The guards escorted him out. In the hallway, an assistant waited with a cardboard box. Grant's nameplate sat inside. A framed diploma. A few pens. A photo from his wedding day. Glass cracked across Eleanor's face. Grant snatched the box with stiff, angry movements and walked toward the elevator, shoulders rigid, jaw clenched so hard the muscle jumped. Eleanor watched from the boardroom doorway, the cool air of the hall brushing her skin. The elevator dinged again as the doors opened, then closed. Grant disappeared. Minutes later, through the boardroom window, Eleanor saw him cross the parking lot, the box held tight against his chest like a shield that couldn't stop anything. He reached his car, tossed the box into the back seat, and stood there for a second, staring at the building. Then he pulled the cracked wedding photo from the box and dropped it onto the asphalt. The frame hit the ground with a brittle snap. Eleanor's breath left her slowly. Mo appeared beside her, close enough that Eleanor could feel the warmth of her shoulder. "How do you feel?" Mo asked, voice low. Eleanor didn't look away from the parking lot. Her hands rested at her sides, fingers slightly curled, nails pressing into her palms. "I thought I'd feel satisfied," she said, honest and exhausted. "I thought I'd feel triumphant." Mo waited. Eleanor swallowed. The city looked distant behind the glass, blurred by morning haze. "I just feel tired," she said. Mo's arm slid around her shoulders, careful of her ribs. "That's allowed," she murmured. "You didn't win a fight. You ended a war." Eleanor watched Grant's car pull out of the lot and merge into traffic like any other vehicle. No sirens, no spotlight. Just a man driving away from the life he'd believed was untouchable. On the table behind her, the evidence bag sat under the lights sealed, stamped, undeniable. And for the first time in months, Eleanor felt the room stop closing in. 6 months after the boardroom vote, the courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish. Eleanor didn't go inside. She sat in Mo's car across the street, hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had already cooled. The lid was slightly warped from being gripped too tightly. A thin winter sun hung low over the buildings, washing everything in pale light that made even stone look tired. Mo glanced at her from the driver's seat. "You sure you don't want to watch him walk in?" Eleanor stared through the windshield at the courthouse steps, where people moved in and out like ants carrying files. "I don't need to," she said. Her voice was calm, but it carried a finality that surprised even her. The radio was off. The only sounds were the quiet tick of the turn signal Mo had accidentally left on and the distant rush of traffic. Eleanor listened to the ticking until it faded into background noise, the way some pains did when you stopped feeding them attention. Mo exhaled and reached over, turning the signal off. The sudden silence felt softer. Across the street, Dennis Oakley emerged from the courthouse doors with a folder tucked under his arm. He walked with the same controlled pace he always had, as if haste would imply doubt. He spotted the car, gave a small nod, and crossed the street. When he opened the back door and slid in beside Eleanor, the car filled with the faint scent of leather and cold air. "It's done," Dennis said. Eleanor didn't ask what he meant. She just watched his mouth form the words and felt something in her chest loosen. Dennis opened the folder. Inside was a stamped decree, black ink, clean lines, a judge's signature that looked almost careless for how much it changed. Final. Eleanor's eyes lingered on the word, as if it might blur and disappear. "He pled to reduce charges," Dennis added, voice even. 18 months. Minimum security. A fine. Restitution structured through asset recovery. Mo let out a low whistle. "That's it." Dennis's gaze flicked to her. It was the deal his counsel could get once the evidence was airtight. Eleanor looked down at her coffee, at the thin ring of liquid clinging to the lid. She thought she would feel triumph hearing the sentence. She thought she would feel satisfaction. Instead, she felt quiet. Not peace exactly, not yet, but quiet, the way a room felt after a storm moved on. "And Vivian?" Eleanor asked, her voice softer. "Cleared," Dennis replied. "Completely. The forged documents were traced back to him. She's relocating." Mo nodded once, approval tightening her mouth. "Good." Dennis closed the folder carefully, as if sealing it again. "The settlement is in place," he continued. "Half of the legitimate marital assets. Title transfers are already being processed. Your name will be removed from any remaining exposure once the forensic accounting finishes its final reporting." Eleanor exhaled slowly, watching her breath fog the window. Across the street, the courthouse doors opened again. A man stepped out in a suit too sharp for a cold day, his jaw set, his posture rigid, a mask hanging on by habit. Grant. Even from this distance, Eleanor recognized the way he walked as if he owned the sidewalk. But there was something different now. Not humiliation exactly. More like an emptiness where certainty used to live. He paused at the top step, scanning the street as if expecting eyes, as if expecting her. Eleanor didn't move. Grant's gaze passed over the line of parked cars without landing. Then he descended the steps and disappeared into a waiting vehicle. Mo watched him go and muttered, "Coward." Eleanor's voice was barely above a whisper. "He's not worth my breath anymore." Dennis studied Eleanor's face for a moment, then nodded as if he'd been waiting for that sentence. "If you're ready," he said. "Your father asked if you would come this Sunday." The word father still felt sharp on her tongue, but it didn't cut the way it used to. Eleanor nodded once. "I'll come." The estate was quieter than she remembered, not because it lacked life, but because it held it gently. Firelight flickered in the study even in daylight. Books stood in patient rows. The air smelled faintly of smoke and cedar and something floral that came from the arrangements a housekeeper refreshed without being asked. Raymond sat in his usual chair, a blanket folded over his knees. His suit was still expensive, but it hung looser now, as if his body was slowly withdrawing from the world. His hands looked thinner. His skin looked more translucent in the light, veins visible beneath it like blue ink. He smiled when Eleanor entered, and the smile reached his tired eyes. "You came," he said. Eleanor stopped just inside the doorway, feeling the familiar stiffness in her ribs as she breathed. She nodded. "I said I would." Raymond's gaze flicked to Mo, who remained near the door, arms crossed, protective by instinct. "Thank you," he said to Mo. Mo gave him a tight nod that wasn't quite forgiveness and wasn't quite hostility, just acknowledgement. Eleanor moved to the chair opposite him and sat carefully. The leather was cool at first, then warmed beneath her weight. Raymond watched her with a careful kind of attention, as if memorizing her in case time stole details. "I received the court notice," he said quietly. "Dennis told me." Eleanor didn't offer commentary. She didn't want to talk about Grant in this room. Not here. Raymond seemed to understand. He reached toward the side table and lifted a small bundle of envelopes tied with a faded ribbon. The paper was yellowed at the edges, softened by age. "Your mother's letters," he said. Eleanor's throat tightened. The ribbon looked fragile, like something that would fall apart if handled too roughly. She accepted the bundle with both hands, the paper surprisingly heavy. Raymond's voice lowered. "She wrote them over the years," he said, "when something mattered. She asked me to keep them until you were ready." Eleanor stared at the handwriting on the top envelope. The ink had faded slightly, but the curves of the letters were unmistakable. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt, not with nausea, but with memory. She untied the ribbon slowly. The fibers resisted, then gave way. The knot loosened like a held breath. The first letter was dated months before her mother's death. Eleanor opened it with careful fingers. The paper crackled softly, the sound delicate and intimate. The words inside were written in a hand that shook, but the love behind them was steady. As Eleanor read, the fire popped in the hearth, a small, bright snap, and the scent of smoke deepened. Her vision blurred. A tear slid down her cheek without permission, warm against cold skin. Raymond didn't speak. He didn't reach for her. He simply sat there, letting the silence hold what words couldn't. When Eleanor finished the first letter, her hands were trembling. She set it back on her lap and stared at the fire until the flames came back into focus. I don't know if I can forgive you, she said finally, voice rough. Not completely. Not yet. Raymond nodded once. I'm not asking you to, he replied. His voice was quiet, honest. I'm asking for time. Eleanor's chest rose and fell carefully. Outside the tall windows, the world moved on without them. Inside, the room felt suspended. Raymond's eyes glistened. Whatever time I have left, he said, I don't want to die as strangers. Eleanor stared at him, at the man she had turned into a monster in her mind because it was easier than admitting he was human, a human who had failed, a human who had waited, a human who was running out of days. Her fingers tightened around the letter bundle. I don't want that either, she said. She didn't stand. She didn't cross the room. She wasn't ready for that. But she reached across the space between their chairs and took his hand. His grip was weak, skin cool and thin, but he held on like it mattered. Mo looked away, blinking hard. Raymond's voice broke on a breath. Thank you, he whispered. Eleanor swallowed, her throat aching. She looked down at their joined hands, at the quiet proof of something changing. The firelight flickered across the envelopes, across the faded ribbon, across the scars Eleanor carried beneath her dress. Outside, somewhere in the distance, a bell rang the hour. Eleanor kept holding Raymond's hand, and for the first time in a long time, the room felt unlocked. She didn't walk through the door all at once, but she finally stopped standing on the wrong side of it. Freedom was not loud. It was a hand held in silence, and a life that belonged to her again.